I'm going to be talking about not just affordable housing, but I want to be having conversations around how do we scale affordable housing using technology. And what is interesting to note is that with a lot of the things that are happening already in the KSA, we're looking at how does the Global South have some kind of partnership that just enables there to be some sort of interaction and collaboration. And so affordable housing is not just about a housing agenda, right? Now, when you talk about affordable housing, we're looking at, investment in a global scale, okay, where capital meets innovation and where reforms sort of meet a lot of technology and where nations build prosperity. And so now I'm looking at across the global south, okay, what you find, I'm talking about Asia, excluding Japan, China is there, you have South Korea, you have African countries, right? So there's a lot of technologies that is happening right now. But what you will realize that at the center of all of the reforms in the global south, you have Saudi Arabia at the center with a lot of investment in technology. And so we're saying that if you want to scale affordable housing, okay, how do you leverage on the transformation that is happening in Saudi Arabia, where you have, over 300,000 housing units delivered, right? Digital transformation is at 100%, okay? And you have a mortgage market that has done over 400% within the last 6 or 7 years. And so how do we leverage this for the entirety, of the global south, where you have Africa and you have a lot of the countries in the Middle East as well. Now, if you look at the scale of affordable housing across the world, the housing gap is put at about 1.6 billion. Okay, so just try and contextualize that, where you have a housing gap of 1.6 billion people, units of housing that needs to be delivered. How do you scale that across the world? And interestingly, 80%, okay, of this housing gap resides in the global south, which are the countries that I've just mentioned about. Now, how do you begin to solve that problem at scale, right? And this is where the collaboration, that I'm sharing with us comes about. So, for example, you have Africa, okay, where you have a talent pool of over 700,000 people, right? In India, for example, you have engineers, totally around 1.5 million engineers that are churned out on a yearly basis. So, for example, if you look at Asia and you look at Africa and you look at Global South together, we have close to around 220 unicorns. For example, I'm from Nigeria. You have around 7, now going on 8 unicorns alone in Nigeria. And what has brought about this? It is because of the kind of talent pool that is in the global south. And what I'm saying is, if Saudi Arabia, right, with its capital influx, can tap on the talent and the resources in Africa across the prop tech space, we'll be able to meet this housing gap that is at 1.6 billion units. And so just to give a few examples. So for example, what has happened looking at a few of the global south countries. If you look at Nigeria, there's a prop tech startup who has helped in digitizing land administration and blockchain. And so today what Sitemap is doing is helping to digitize land registries. Now, if you go to Nigeria, also PropCrowdy is a crowdfunding investment platform that is licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission, helping to democratize real estate investment. So which means even at the bottom of the pyramid, people can invest with as little as $10 or $20 to be on the real estate platform. In India, where you have NoBroker is a big Indian property listing company valued at over $1 billion today. And so the conversation is that how can everybody in the global south begin to tap on the resources that we all have? So let me just run. And then if you look at Kenya, and if you look at India, and you look at Nigeria, you see that PropTech are sharing a lot of housing infrastructure. And this is what I think that it is very necessary, here in the KSA. Artificial intelligence is big. So how we sell, how we build, how we manage property, AI is helping to do all of that. And Africa, Middle East, and some other countries in the global south have talent. Lots, like I said before, over 2 million talents helping to create all of these products. And so this is where I see the power of collaboration, right? In Saudi Arabia, for example, there is a lot of regulatory clarity and scale. There is institutional financing platforms. You have established governance frameworks, and you also have national level delivery mechanisms. Now, if you look at the global south, talking about the countries that I've shared before, you have innovation, speed, and agility. You have low-cost technology experiment, and then you have tested products from a whole lot of market. And so together with this partnership, I think that we can power intelligence platforms that helps to solve the problems of housing. So for example, how do we know what the poor can afford? Those at the bottom of the pyramid. How do we know where they live? How do we know how to help them in just mapping the kind of housing that is needed? At the bottom of the pyramid, you find that a lot of the people do incremental housing. So for people who do incremental housing, how do you scale that? How do you bring in modular technologies? How do you get 3D? How do you get precast technologies that enables these guys to be able to get to the ladder of housing? And that's the kind of collaboration that we are talking about, where this fits into the vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, where you now have the global south bringing a lot of talent pool and resources to be able to enable that. And so in scaling, what do we need to do? Okay, how do we solve the problems for affordable housing? Now, let's take a look at, again, these 1.6 billion people who need housing. How many of these people at the bottom of the pyramid can even actually afford a home? How many can get onto the home ownership platform without some sort of help from the government? Right? Is it profitable for developers to come to the bottom of the pyramid and finance these low-income households? How can technology help to solve this problem? And that's where you see where you have some co-investment platform, where you begin to look at fractional investment. You begin to look at crowdfunding. How can you crowdfund for these people at the bottom of the pyramid? Now, even if you want to do this, how do you do this at scale? And this is where technology plays the part. And this is why I'm saying that with a lot of talent and pool resources in the global south, we can help the KSA and the regions to sort of build all of these platforms that helps generate the mapping and the kind of capital that is needed to fund the bottom of the pyramid. So for example, can there be a South-South Housing Innovation Fund? Or can there be a Global South accelerator program, such that you pull talent from India, you pull talent from Africa, you pull talent, from China, who then helps to be able to solve the scale of affordable housing gaps that we have. And where does Saudi Arabia comes into this? It's because that your regulatory frameworks, has been developed so well, such that the sandboxes, the example of the different sandboxes that have been created at the KSA, can be tapped into by these product and talent resources. And that's exactly what we are looking at in terms of how do you scale affordable housing. And so if you look at the investment opportunity, just like I've said before, right? We have about 1.6 billion people who need housing. 80% of that housing gap is located in the emerging market, right? You have unicorns across Asia, over 200. And then you have a total investment in African startups alone just over the last 3 years at $6.5 billion. So the question is, why do you have people investing in African startups? Because they have the capacity, they have the capabilities, they have the talent. okay, to be able to develop products, and processes that help scale housing in that regard. And so what I'm sharing here today is basically a vision of shared prosperity, okay, between the Saudi Arabia, Africa, and within the global South, the entirety of the South-South relationship, such that at the end of the day, right, Saudi Arabia can bring its capital, Africa can bring its PropTech agility, you have fintech in Latin America, you have the talent at scale in India. And so we can, with all of this, create the kind of affordable housing that we want to do at scale. Because there can never be any affordable housing at scale without technology. And so this is what this shared partnership is really all about in the global South. And so, in wrapping up this conversation, I see a new era of leadership. Okay, I see a new era of South-South housing leadership and collaboration. And Saudi Arabia needs to be at the center of this. Why? Today, we have innovation across the global South ready to scale. So whether you're talking about China, you're talking about India, you're talking about Africa, you have products already ready to scale. So in the medium term, what we can begin to do is begin to come together and see how we make this scale very, very effective. And in the long term, definitely we will build an architecture where housing operations, it's being established, and then to solve that problem for 1.6 billion people becomes really, really possible. And I think that's my conversation today. I hope I'm on time, right? And so we're building, this conversation about building the scale, okay? Building the scale for affordable housing. And again, I'm saying that Saudi Arabia needs to be at the center of this development in this South-South global relationship to scale affordable housing. Thank you very much.